What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I said I wasn't really going to work on the car until this weekend. I guess that's not really true. I got home a little bit earlier today. It's currently around 5 o'clock, I think, where I'm at, but I decided to get out here and play around with the car. And as I'm out here messing around with these wide body flares, I've decided, instead of doing one long install video where we could have a lot of hiccups and a lot of problems and have to backtrack and re-explain what we did, I think I'm going to be better off to do several videos of the installation. And of course, we got two sides of the car so that we can get some more content for the channel while also getting better instructions for the install. I really feel like doing several videos is going to be the way to go. So that's what we're going to do moving forward, because I was worried that, like, if I set up a GoPro and I start recording and the battery dies or something, we miss footage. That's not going to be good for you guys, and I really want to get an install video out for this wide body flare kit because nobody else really has it. This is from Maier. This is the Roman kit. They have one video on their YouTube channel, and it's just not very good. There's no sound. They don't talk about anything. So essentially, you have no instructions with this kit on how to install it. And so that's what I'm hoping to achieve with this little video series we're going to do, is helping you to understand how to get this on the car. I have never installed one myself, but I am familiar with the process, and so we'll go into that as the videos come out. We'll go into that, but today we're going to call this part one. And so what we're doing today, or what we have done, is essentially fit the flares on the driver's side to the car. I haven't even touched the passenger side. And so the front is pretty simple, because you just get it up here and you line up where they have their notches with the notches on the fenders. And so the only tip that I'll give you is, of course, you want to use self-tapping bolts. In this sense, this is what I'm using. You could use screws if you want, but I'm using bolts. Is to put one of the bolts right here, because this will pull this snug. And so the only thing that you really have to figure out with the front flare is your fitment front to back, because you don't want it to be sitting too far back, because then you'll have scrubbing going on in the front, which I've already had an issue with the stock fenders having the bigger wheels. And you don't want it sitting too far forward so that the wheel doesn't look right in the flare. And so you kind of want to get it on the car and get it where you think it needs to be. And I think where I have it right now is pretty close, if not right where it needs to be. But my plan is to put the front tires back on the car, and before I do any permanent mounting, make sure that it's sitting, basically center of the flare, or where it needs to be. And I'm going to gauge that off of photos online of other wide body Mustangs that have this same kit. And so that'll kind of give me a gauge, but I think I'm really close. And even if you're a little bit off, I don't think it's going to hurt anything, as long as you have the same measurements on the passenger side as you do the front. You should have a symmetrical kit. So kind of what I did for now to try to figure out where it goes, I just matched up this bottom body line down here. And so this is pretty close. I might even be able to come forward just another hair, but looking at the inner part of the original fender here, it looks pretty even. Like if I take my hand, it feels pretty flat. If anything, it feels like we start gaining on this side, which is exactly what you would expect because this has to be cut out. You can see where I've already cut it so that the tire wouldn't scrub. So gauging off of this, I really feel like I'm pretty much perfect. And so that's probably going to be the final fitment, but again, I'm going to look at some photos online. I'm going to get the front tire back on the car, and that'll be the way to go. But like I say, I feel like it needs to be lined up down here at the bottom, and it is. And so I think we're good. So for the video purposes, we're going to say this is the fitment. And so now I want to talk about trimming this so that it fits correctly. So you can see that the top here is sticking up too far. Obviously, I don't want there to be like a double hump here, if that makes any sense. And so my thought process is we've got too much material here on top that needs to come off. And so you'll see my tape line. Essentially, I plan to cut it at that line. I have not cut it yet because, again, I want to make sure before I do any cutting that it's where it needs to be on the car. You know, you don't want to get ahead of yourself and start cutting things until you absolutely have to. But I feel like this is going to have to be cut right in this area so that we can blend this to the fender and look good. And so I think Maier just gives you a little extra material there so that you can trim it. And it's the same thing, I believe, here, because if I push this fender further back, the tire is going to hit here. So I don't feel like I need to push the fender further back, and I feel like the curvature here of the kit is pretty lined up with the fender. So I feel like, again, that this is exactly where it needs to be, but you see they gave us an extra lip here. And so my plan for now is just to cut it even with the fender, and I may take off more later to blend it so that it goes with the bumper, or I may even blend the bumper out a little more to match that, but that's a decision that I'll make when I get to final body work, or maybe right before I do the panel bond. Again, this is my first time doing this kit, and they don't give you any instructions on what needs to be trimmed, so you kind of have to just play it by ear. But I know that if I cut it here, I'm not taking off too much material. But again, I want to make sure the fitment is right, which I believe it is. But again, we're going to put the tire on. So that's essentially the front. I don't see any need for any trimming of the rear. Everything looks like it's good. So essentially all I got to do is just blend it into the fender and we should be fine. So that's a little bit of good news there. Like I say, the top is just too high, and I'm basing this line of where I'm cutting it off of the back. And so I want to show you the back. The back does not come all the way to the top like the front does. And so I'm kind of copying this distance. I didn't really measure it, I just eyeballed it, and I may measure it later to get it exact. But the rear fender here, kind of the trick that I found of getting this thing lined up where I believe it needs to be is, you know, eyeballing it where the tire is sitting in the fender. Everything looks pretty symmetrical. You got a little bit less space at the front of the wheel than you do the back, but I think that's how it's supposed to be. And so I kind of did what I did with the front fender, and so I took this thing and I hooked it down here at the bottom of the metal where this fender rolls in, and did the same thing on the back. You can see I got a little bit of play back here. This actually moves just a little bit and doesn't quite cover that, but it's right against it. And so if I push this in, it's just going to bow the body kit. So I think that's right where it needs to be. I feel like this rear fender is exactly where it needs to be. The tire looks good in there. Like I say, it looks pretty symmetrical. I don't see any issues. And so what I did, like I say, is I hooked those, and you're going to need a helper. That's one thing, because trying to hold this thing up and put the screws in is not fun. You need somebody to hold it so that you can get it to screw in exactly where you're holding it. But I started on this side. I kind of hooked it, put a screw here. I come to the other side and I just hooked it at the bottom, and then I put a screw at the top so that the bottom is still loose. But that's the only screws I need for now for the mocking up stage, which is what we're doing currently. And so if you're not running side scoops on your car, you may have a little bit of gauging here where the body line changes. I've already got side scoops on, and I already knew that when I got the wide body kit, I was more than likely going to have to trim a little bit off of it, because I set these back I think about 1 inch, and so I knew that it was going to be close tolerances, but all of this is going to get blended together. And so the center line is fine, but right here we got a little bit of a notch, and so I'm just going to cut this out, and all that'll get blended. You won't be able to tell. And then at the bottom down here, I was thinking about cutting this out of this corner, but I think it's going to be okay, because when I push it all in, it seems to go flat. And so we're just going to put plenty of screws in it when we do put it on, and I don't think I'm going to have any issue blending that part of the panel in. And so the rear is essentially a little bit easier than the front, for now anyway, because I can see that the tire looks good. And this looks pretty close to Maier's video. They did measurements, but they didn't really show you where they were measuring from. But this looks pretty close. I think if I remember their video correctly, they were measuring like 11 inches to here. I haven't even measured it, but I'm assuming they were measuring from this top body line, because if they're measuring from there, then you're always going to get the same measurement. But if I can find my tape measure, we'll grab it over here, and we can just see what we're getting, if it's even close. And so yeah, this is what they did in their video. They showed the tape measure like this, but didn't show the top. They didn't show like what they were measuring from. And so it's pretty spot on. We're a little bit over 11 inches, but their camera angle, I feel like it's the same as what they had, because their camera angle was weird, and it could have been a little bit over 11 in their video. But I knew it was somewhere in that because I had watched the video recently. So I think, again, the measurements are perfect for the rear. It looks good. And all I have to do is copy this on the other side, which is easy because you're just using the inner fender tabs to line it up and making sure that you got the same gap here, and you'll have symmetrical fenders. So I think that's going to be pretty straightforward. Front and back I think are going to be good, but again, I do plan to put this car on the ground and just double check this front and make sure that it looks good. And I also plan to drive the car before I do any permanent mounting and make sure that nothing is scrubbing. The next video that we do for these fender flares will be showing you how much metal we cut out, and so we can go over that in this video. Clearly we don't need this metal. Like, there's a gap here, so this metal's got to go. And from my understanding to what Maier said is basically you take out whatever you can feel with your hand. And so we're essentially taking this metal from here all the way to here. And so we're only going to have metal on this gap right here underneath. So this will be our mounting source, and this will be flush on the other side, and that'll come up and that'll follow this body line and stay in a flat shape all the way around. And so again, how you gauge that is just sticking your hand in there, and when you get to the flat point, you know that's how much metal is coming out. And that way you eliminate the problem of having bare metal underneath your flares. All of the bare metal that will be sanded underneath this is going to be covered in panel bond, which is going to keep it safe from the elements. It's not going to rust. Well, we shouldn't have any issues. Panel bond is bonded to bare metal, and so you're keeping the elements out. I may even come back inside the fender with some seam sealer and just go around the edge where it's cut if I don't have a clear line of panel bond. But I plan to use a little extra panel bond so that I can smooth that out with my finger and keep any moisture from ever getting in there. But all of the flat surfaces that are going to be bonded are going to be covered in panel bond. You can panel bond over primer, epoxy primer, but I don't recommend it. But that's just a personal preference. If you want to bond over epoxy primer, you absolutely can, but you need to make sure that it's sanded, and then you still run the risk of burning through to the bare metal anyway. But if you wanted to do that, I suppose you could, but you're just giving yourself one more failure point if you do that. So I'm going to sand down to bare metal. 80 grit is what I plan to use, and get that thing really scratched up so that it will bond correctly. And again, there will be no exposed bare metal. There'll be no bare metal that's sitting in any air pockets. That panel bond is going to be completely smeared on there, holding this fender on. And that's going to be the same on the back as well. The back is going to be a little bit more work than the front, because the front you're just cutting away the metal that you don't need. On the back, you actually have to cut it, and then you have to cut the inner fender well and bring it up to match this level. So your inner fender well is going to come all the way up to where this body kit flattens out, and then you got to make the inner fender well match that. And you can either put metal back in there and weld it in, or you can get fiberglass mat and put fiberglass in there. I plan to do the fiberglass route. I think it'll be quicker and easier than trying to bend metal and shape metal to get it in there. But that's also a personal preference, I suppose, to what you want to do. If you're doing mini tubs on your car, then that step isn't necessary, but we're not doing any tubs on this car. They're just not necessary. We're not going to be running tires that are so extreme that we need tubs. And so I think that about wraps it up for this video. This video is a little longer than I kind of expected it to be, but I want to try to be as thorough as I can to help you guys. If you think that I'm saying anything wrong, or maybe you've installed one of these kits yourself and I'm doing something wrong, let me know in the comments. Happy to hear any suggestions. Again, we're all going to learn this together on the channel, but there are no other videos on YouTube of this in particular kit being installed aside from the one from Maier, and they only show you the back panel. They don't even show you the front at all. And Maier's website doesn't even show this front panel when you buy it. It shows a much smaller panel, same curvature, but much smaller panel. So it's good to see that they actually made it bigger where it will mount better. But that's the situation we're in. We're going to end the video here, and I will do another update video once I've reached another step. Probably won't be tonight, because I don't think I'm going to cut anything tonight. Probably not even going to take the car off the jack stands tonight. I think that's going to be for a time that I have more free time. It's getting dark so early now. Really don't want to be out here messing around. I might do a little bit before the weekend if I get home early again, but I think for now, this is going to be just the first video installment, and you'll probably see a few more videos come out over the weekend. I'll probably release a couple of installments of what I get done throughout, maybe possibly Friday evening. I don't want to make any promises, but definitely Saturday there will be some update videos, and then Sunday we will have our normal Sunday video, hopefully showcasing that we at least have one side of the car bolted on. It may not be panel bonded on. We'll just have to see. I don't think this is going to be a super long process, but I don't know how long it's going to take me to get the rears exactly right with having to do the fiberglass work and all that. So we'll just have to see. But that's where we're going to end this video, guys. You can look for another video coming up on Saturday, hopefully several videos, and we'll get this thing figured out and hopefully have this car looking good real soon. But anyway, until Saturday, guys, I hope everybody has a good one, and don't forget to subscribe.